Imagine waking up one morning to find that the map of your world has changed overnight. Not a single nation, but an entire region. History, hopes, and futures, redrawn by bold new lines and concrete realities on the ground. Right now, as headlines focus on the war in Gaza and the world's attention shifts from crisis to crisis, a fundamental transformation is quietly reshaping the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and it's happening faster than ever before. The largest expansion of settlements in the West Bank in decades isn't just a local story. It's a seismic event with global consequences, raising the question, is the very idea of a Palestinian state being erased, one housing unit at a time? Today we dive into the high-stakes game unfolding in the hills of the West Bank, a story of power, ideology, international law, and the economics of land that could redefine the Middle East and the world's approach to peace and conflict. Why are Israeli settlements expanding now? Who stands to win, who stands to lose, and what's at risk for everyone else when concrete mixes with geopolitics? Stay with us. To understand the fierce controversy over settlements, let's take a quick step back. The West Bank, a region nestled between Israel and Jordan, steeped in ancient history, but at the center of a modern, bitter dispute. Since Israel captured the West Bank from Jordan in 1967, its future has hung in the balance. The international consensus since then has largely viewed the West Bank as the core of a potential Palestinian state. But there's always been a competing vision, a patchwork of Israeli settlements, military roads, and infrastructure, slowly but steadily extending Israel's presence deep into Palestinian territory. Following the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, there was a faint hope, an agreement that might finally bring two peoples to live in peace, side by side. Israel agreed not to establish new settlements, and many believed the road to a Palestinian state was open, at least in theory. But on the ground, the facts kept shifting. Outposts appeared, then expanded. What started as trailers on a remote hilltop often grew into bustling communities with schools, shopping centers, and roads linking them to Israel proper. Today, the West Bank is home to more than 529,000 Israeli settlers, living in 141 officially recognized settlements, and, increasingly, in dozens of smaller, unofficial outposts. But here's the twist. Recent months have seen an acceleration never before witnessed. According to the United Nations and leading human rights organizations, between November 2023 and October 2024, the Israeli government approved more than 20,000 new settlement housing units. That's not just a number, it's an explosion of construction, legal approvals, and infrastructure, at a scale that dwarfs almost any previous period. This expansion is not happening in the shadows. Instead, it comes with open declarations. Israel's own finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, himself a resident of a West Bank settlement, has described the decision to add nearly 24 new settlements as a great day for settlement and an important day for the State of Israel. In fact, the Israeli Security Cabinet's secret session, eventually leaking into the public, revealed plans for what activists call the largest expansion since Oslo. Human rights groups like B'Tselem are sounding the alarm. Israel continues to promote Jewish supremacy through the theft of Palestinian land and the ethnic cleansing of the West Bank, a B'Tselem spokesperson said, echoing a warning heard across international capitals. The numbers are staggering. As of May 2025, the Israeli government had decided to establish 49 new settlements, with 48 new outposts springing up in just 2024 alone. And crucially, dozens of previously unauthorized outposts have now been legalized under Israeli law, a move that, critics say, gives them permanence and political weight. Why now? The answer lies in a combustible mix of politics, ideology, and war. After the devastating Hamas-led attack of October 7, 2023, Israel's political climate shifted sharply rightward. Calls for security, revenge, and deterrence became intertwined with long-standing dreams of reclaiming what some see as Israel's biblical heartland. Defense Minister Israel Katz is blunt. Settlement expansion prevents the establishment of a Palestinian state that would endanger Israel. The government's stance is no longer couched in diplomatic ambiguity. Their goal, to anchor Israel's hold on the West Bank, not just militarily, but demographically and economically. On the other side, Palestinians see a different reality unfolding. One of land loss, home demolitions, and shattered hopes. Nabil Abu Rudaina, spokesperson for President Mahmoud Abbas, told reporters, "This extremist Israeli government is trying by all means to prevent the establishment of an independent Palestinian state." International reaction has been fierce but fragmented. Jordan, just across the river, condemned the move as a flagrant violation of international law. The UK's Minister for the Middle East, Hamish Falconer, characterized the expansion as a deliberate obstacle to Palestinian statehood. Even the United States, Israel's primary ally, has voiced deep concerns. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called new settlements counterproductive to reaching an enduring peace. But for every statement of condemnation, there are hard realities on the ground: bulldozers, concrete, and surveillance cameras. The Israeli military clears land in the northern West Bank as new roads appear. Meanwhile, the International Court of Justice declared in 2024 that Israel's presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful, yet construction accelerates. The logic for settlement growth is, for Israel, a mix of ideology and security. Bezalel Smotrich, finance minister, says, "We have not taken a foreign land but the heritage of our ancestors. Next step, sovereignty." For many on the Israeli right, the notion of dividing the land of Israel is unthinkable. Settlement is not just policy, but destiny. That ideological mission is now overlapping with realpolitik. After the Gaza war, many in Israel see the world as hostile, unstable, and unreliable. To secure the future, they say, it's necessary to put facts on the ground, literally. But here's where the story darkens. With every new settlement, the possibility of a contiguous, viable Palestinian state shrinks. Roadblocks, walls, and settlement clusters cut the West Bank into isolated pockets. The Palestinian economy, already battered, faces new constraints. Shamefully, home demolitions and raids have become common, and many Palestinians have been driven from their villages, not as a headline, but as a daily reality. The international response, while loud, has so far lacked real teeth. The UN and EU warn of the dangers, but on the ground, facts trump words. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor is reportedly considering arrest warrants for prominent Israeli politicians. Yet Israeli planning committees continue to approve new blueprints every month. Emotions among Palestinians are at a breaking point. The announcement of the building of 22 new settlements in the West Bank is part of the war led by Netanyahu against the Palestinian people, said a senior Hamas official. Israeli officials, meanwhile, argue that only by maintaining a permanent grip can they prevent terrorism and ensure national survival. As Amnesty International's Erica Guevara Rosas puts it, Israel's occupation and annexation of the Palestinian territories are unlawful, and its discriminatory laws and policies against Palestinians violate the prohibition on racial segregation and apartheid. Yet the settlements themselves are not simply about ideology. They carry massive economic, social, and geopolitical implications. Each new outpost means more roads, water pipelines, and military protection. For Israeli companies, this means lucrative government contracts, jobs, and steady economic growth in settlement areas, reinforcing the cycle. For Palestinians, it means restricted movement, fewer job opportunities, and a shrinking land base. The status quo is pushing the region to a crossroads. Some experts warn of de facto annexation, a slow-motion takeover that hardens into permanent reality. Lior Amihai from Peace now bluntly notes, the Israeli government no longer pretends otherwise. The annexation of the occupied territories and expansion of settlements is its central goal. As the world debates, the landscape transforms. The patchwork of settlements, once sold as temporary security zones, now look more permanent than ever. For Palestinians, hope recedes. For the Israeli right, each new neighborhood feels like vindication after years of terror and uncertainty. For the region, the risks grow. Possible collapse of the Palestinian Authority, the threat of wider conflict, and a humanitarian crisis on both sides. And now, a dangerous question looms. What happens next? If these trends continue unchecked, are we witnessing the final erasure of the possibility for a two-state solution? Will the world respond with more than just words, or is the map of the Middle East being redrawn, irreversibly, in front of our eyes? Stay with us, because in the second half we'll dig into the global stakes, the cascading economic and social impacts, and the scenarios that could shape the future for Israelis, Palestinians, and the entire region. So, what are the consequences of this dramatic acceleration in West Bank settlements? And does the world truly grasp their magnitude? Let's dive into the possible futures now unfolding, the risks and opportunities ahead, and what it all means for you and the world. First, let's imagine Scenario 1, de facto annexation. This is no longer a far-fetched prediction, but a trajectory openly championed by top Israeli officials. With the legalization of dozens of outposts and the largest wave of new settlements since the Oslo Accords, the Israeli government appears determined to cement control over the West Bank. Defense Minister Israel Katz calls this move a crushing response to Palestinian resistance and a way to guarantee Israel's security. But for Palestinians, and much of the international community, the message is clear: annexation is here, even if not declared on paper. If this path continues, what will the region look like in 5 or 10 years? Experts warn that the two-state solution, once the gold standard for peace negotiations, will become not just unlikely, but physically impossible. The West Bank, already fragmented by hundreds of settlements and a labyrinth of barriers, would be completely dissected. Palestinian communities facing home demolitions and land seizures would be cut off from each other, their prospects for statehood withering with every new construction crane. The result? A single state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, but one fundamentally unequal, where millions of Palestinians lack political rights yet are subject to Israeli control. Erica Guevara-Rosas of Amnesty International calls this a system of racial segregation and apartheid. If so, what will the world do next? Here, we hit Scenario 2, international intervention. For decades, global leaders issued statements but stopped short of true pressure. That may be about to change. The International Criminal Court is now investigating Israeli officials for war crimes linked to settlement expansion. Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan is reportedly considering arrest warrants for high-ranking Israeli ministers. Jordan and the UK have condemned the expansion as a flagrant violation of international law. And most significant of all, even the United States, Israel's strongest ally, has begun voicing open alarm, with Secretary of State Antony Blinken declaring settlements counterproductive. If the situation escalates, we could see a new era of international sanctions, freezing assets, suspending arms deals, or even curbing economic ties. History shows that such measures, while controversial, can have real impact. Think of the pressure that led to an end of apartheid in South Africa. Coordinated international action could, in theory, force Israel's government to reconsider the cost of its current course. But what if neither annexation nor outside pressure brings change? Scenario 3 is the most unsettling: escalating violence. The West Bank is already seeing a sharp uptick in military raids and settler attacks. Tens of thousands have been displaced, economic life has ground to a halt, and frustration boils over into riots and armed clashes. The Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the West Bank, faces ever-waning legitimacy. Experts fear it could collapse, creating a power vacuum. In this scenario, extremism flourishes, and the conflict could spill well beyond Israel and Palestine, dragging neighboring countries into instability. The risks of such an outcome are grave, not just for those in the region, but for the world. The West Bank has often been the matchstick for wider Middle East conflagrations. A spiral of violence could shut down crucial trade routes, send oil prices soaring, and unleash new waves of refugees. No one would be untouched. But amid these dark possibilities, there are rays of opportunity. Could a surge of international attention and legal action force a pause, and perhaps the first glimmer of real negotiations in years? History shows that even entrenched conflicts can shift when enough pressure is applied. Let's put this in practical terms. Why should this matter to you, wherever you live? First, because the realities in the West Bank are a global issue. Human rights, stability, and the rule of law are principles that underpin the international system. When these are eroded in one place, the effects ripple outward. Economic shocks, waves of migration, and outbreaks of violence do not respect borders. Your country, your community, could feel the aftershocks. Second, because this conflict tests the boundaries of international law. The United Nations, the International Court of Justice, and the norms built after World War II all rest on the principle that territory cannot be taken by force and rights cannot be ignored. If these red lines crumble in the West Bank, what precedent does it set elsewhere? When powerful states act with impunity, smaller nations lose faith in security guarantees. That makes the world less predictable, less safe, for everyone. Third, and perhaps most personally, this is about the lessons of power and principle. The West Bank shows us how deeply ideology, security fears, and history can entrench conflict. As observers, we can look for easy answers. Just negotiate, just compromise, just move back the settlements. But the reality is that when both sides feel existentially threatened, even minor steps become monumental. So, what can be learned and used from this situation? Here are 4 practical takeaways for anyone seeking to understand, teach, or act. 1. The power of narrative. Settlement expansion is driven by deeply held stories about history, security, and identity. Understanding the narratives on each side is key to grasping why compromise is so elusive. If you work in conflict resolution, media, or education, highlighting these stories is the first step toward empathy and perhaps creative solutions. 2. The limits and leverage of international pressure. Global condemnation matters, but only when backed by coordinated actions, clear consequences, and the will to enforce them. If you care about human rights, pushing your government or institution to match words with deeds can make a difference. Economic ties, legal accountability, and public scrutiny are all levers of change. 3. The risks of complacency. The West Bank crisis did not emerge overnight. It grew as the world averted its gaze. If we want to prevent similar crises elsewhere, we must stay informed and engaged. That means supporting honest journalism, scrutinizing official narratives, and refusing to accept silence as neutrality. 4. The importance of hope and principle, even in slow-motion emergencies. History shows that even the most seemingly intractable conflicts can shift through persistent diplomacy, grassroots activism, or sudden political shock. The future is not written yet. If enough people, inside and outside the region, refuse to look away, it is still possible to change course. Let's step back and answer the big question. What are the true global, economic, and political consequences of this new reality, and could anything still reverse it? The global impact is profound. Politically, the end of the two-state solution would force nations to take sides, shred decades of diplomacy, and undermine institutions like the United Nations. Economically, new rounds of conflict could unsettle world markets, especially energy prices, and disrupt trade in a region that is still a vital artery for global commerce. Humanly, millions are already paying the price, and millions more could be affected by the next phase of unrest. And yet, as we've seen, nothing in history is truly irreversible. Settlement expansion may be the central policy of the current Israeli government, but governments change, and with enough outside pressure, so do policies. The international community has more tools at its disposal than ever: ICC indictments, sanctions, arms embargoes, trade deals, and the power of public opinion. If those tools are used decisively, not just symbolically, there remains a narrow window to force a freeze on settlements and reopen the door, however narrowly, to diplomatic negotiations. The secret fact few discuss is just how close we are to a point of no return. According to Peace Now, the Israeli anti-occupation group, the current moves amount to the biggest expansion since the 1990s. If unchecked, this could entrench a single, unequal reality that lasts for generations. But if international actors step in strongly, if even a handful of leaders decide the risk is too high, history could pivot once more. In the end, the future of the West Bank sits at a crossroads. One road leads to permanent division, endemic violence, and lost hope. The other, though harder to see, offers the chance for accountability, pressure, and, just maybe, a return to the negotiating table. Your attention, your voice, makes a difference. Share this video to spread awareness. Comment below. What do you think the world should do right now? If you learned something new, hit like and subscribe.